What's up, champs? Welcome back to another episode of Keeping Karlsson Short Shifts, our twice weekly amuse-bouche type of show in between the mega shows where we're going to just sample a bunch of different news items. I've got a special treat for you today. First of all, I'm here, Elan Dubrovsky. Like Lewis mentioned on Tuesday's show, Jeremy's been jumping in to do some matchup maximizers and killing it, so I took a turn on doing the short shifts when he was supposed to, and with me is our now somewhat regular guest on Short Shifts. I guess we can call you a Short Shifts co-host. Derrick Dodgson is back. Welcome back to the show, Derrick.
Thanks, Elon. Happy to be back.
Yeah, it's always fun to have you on the podcast. We've had you on a bunch of Keeping Karlsson shows with lots of other people, but this is our first Elan Derrick joint. So I'm curious to see how it's going to go. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun. And how could we not? It's Bedard night. Connor Bedard back in the lineup. This surprise news. So that's where we obviously have to start here. This is obviously going to be once again making Chicago a team that might score goals, which makes some of their players more interesting. I feel like there were times earlier in the season where Philip Kurashev was someone we were saying was worth rostering. Today I'm seeing that Bedard is playing with Foligno and Kurashev. I should mention also, speaking of Nick Foligno, that he's on a bit of a run. You know, like Brian and I talked about on the last show, and I was like, yeah, maybe of all the Chicago people, he'd be the one I'd grab. And like, since I said it, you know, he had an assist in that last game against Vancouver, goals in a couple games before that. Now he's going to be playing with Bedard. So obviously you're excited to get Bedard back. What do you think about the periphery guys, your Folignos and your Kurashevs, now that they have their superstar rookie back?
I think there's potential for one or two of them, but it's hard to know for sure who it's going to be more than a game or two out. You know, we saw the lines really shake up a lot in the first half of the season before Bedard got injured. So, you know, short-term streams once we see, and I guess it's Kurashev for now, but I wouldn't have a lot of confidence that that state of affairs is going to stick for very long.
Right. Don't bet the farm on one of these Bedard line mates, but for a stream, it could potentially go well. Maybe this could also help Seth Jones a little bit because he's turned into quite a huge bust. You know, we talked about Taylor Hall for a lot of the season, how much of a bust he was when we expected big things. I think a lot of people were also expecting big things from Seth Jones with Bedard in the lineup. And obviously they haven't played that much together with Jones being injured and Bedard being injured. But yeah, only 16 points in 38 games, only 1 point in Jones's last 5. So yeah, I don't know. New beginnings. It'll be fun to see what happens. We're recording this now at 7:34 on Thursday night. I don't even know what day it is. Who knows? But anyway, it'll be fun to see how that game plays out. Maybe I'll be able to check it out a little bit after we're done recording. They're playing the Penguins starting at 8:30. All right, that's not the only player back today. Over on LA, Victor Arvidsson is returning for the Kings. That game is underway, but again, like super early on. There were some different lines that we saw with Arvidsson, like leading up to his return, but today he's back with like his old friends, the group that, you know, really went off a couple seasons ago, got Trevor Moore on the map. So the Danault Arvidsson Moore line is back together, and then Kevin Fiala has been skating on the top line with Kopitar and Byfield, and then Adrian Kempe then has been bumped to, I guess, the third line with Dubois and Laferriere. So a whole new setup here. I guess, you know, it's hard to like come up with a question to ask here. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see if Arvidsson is 100% and what he can do. He's been always a solid player in fantasy. And I guess the other thing to watch is like, should we be nervous about Kempe or, you know, but I guess who knows if these lines will stick. So probably not worth digging too much into, right?
Yeah, I mean, LA's been on a slide recently, so they're, you know, presumably going to keep shuffling things up until they find something that works. And Arvidsson coming back with Danault and Moore could be good for all three of them. Kempe, you know, with Dubois and Laferriere could be productive. You know, it's hard to be worse than they have been the last month or so. So I think Arvidsson, you know, if he's been sitting in free agency since he's been injured the whole season, you know, definitely go out and grab him. I could be wrong based on the Yahoo interface here, but it's telling me that his average a couple points per game last year was 4.7, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that's great.
Good mix of shots, goals, assists, even some blocks in there as well. So if he returns to his old ways, it'll be great. Although the kind of injury he had, which I believe was I can't remember right now if it's a back or hip, but it was the kind of thing that people were speculating. You know, it might take him some time to get back to his old ways if he does get back up there.
Yeah, definitely there have been some cases of players coming back from injury and like taking a little bit of time to get going. Remember Patrick Kane, when he came back, was looking like, yeah, nothing special. And then all of a sudden he totally went off. So yeah, definitely if you have been holding Arvidsson this whole time, maybe don't drop him right away if the results aren't there immediately. But at the same time, don't hold too long. We're starting to finally see Logan Couture getting dropped from a bunch of teams, though now he's injured again. So I guess now you can stash him. Okay, so more injury and outjury news here. Over in Arizona, Connor Ingram wasn't able to finish the last game for the Coyotes. So Karel Vejmelka came in, and the word is that Ingram's injury isn't like super long term, but maybe a week or so. And we're recording this Thursday night. Coyotes play Friday, Sunday, and then Monday and Wednesday. So who knows if maybe even Vejmelka gets 4 of the games, or maybe just the guy who gets called up will get 1. But, Karel Vejmelka obviously hasn't been as good as, I thought that he would be going into the year. Like, there's been stretches where he was absolutely terrible. But, his last game against Minnesota, well, that was the game he came in for Ingram. He did okay there. Before that, he had a 4 goals against game against Philly. But actually, I saw tweets saying that he actually was one of the reasons they were able to hang in that game, and it wasn't his fault. Before that, he had a shutout against Vegas. So maybe Vejmelka's finding his game. Of course, before that, there's a 6 goal against game and then a 4 and a 4. So could be all over the place. But if you want some starts, especially 2 starts, probably Vejmelka's the only guy available for you right now as you listen to this that could give you 2 starts for the rest of this week. Speaking of goalie injuries, Connor Ingram wasn't the only one who got hurt. Also, Ville Husso, unfortunately, had one of those unfortunate injuries where that you come back and then right away are hurt again. And yeah, Husso got himself into a game for the Red Wings, his first one for a while against the Oilers, let in a goal on 7 shots, and then was pulled. And now he's week to week. It's going to be a while. So I guess we're back to Alex Lyon time as the full-time starter, which is good news, except for the fact that Lyon hasn't been as incredible lately. He really got blown up by the Oilers, letting in 7 goals on 29 shots, though he came in cold. Let's just not blame him. I wouldn't read too much into that. Before that, he had a couple games also of 3 goals against. I still would be jumping all over Alex Lyon. If he was dropped because the person was assuming that now he's back to 50-50, I think you got your volume guide. No way Reimer is getting a lot of the starts. I don't care how bad Lyon does.
Yeah, I'd agree that they're probably not going to give a huge workload to Reimer at this point in his career. Both Lyon and Vejmelka, have potential as tandems or as workload starters when the other person is out. But either way, I'd say better in your points volume leagues, not great in rate stats. I'd be a little bit, cautious still about dropping, some goalie on a maybe more surefire playoff team to pick up one of these guys. Still not a great track record overall, I think, from a rate stats perspective.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Lyon has gone on runs. At the end of last year with Florida, he went on that incredible run to help them get into the playoffs. But yeah, I guess obviously it depends who we're comparing him to. At this point, I have more faith in Lyon versus Vejmelka for what it's worth. But also the Ingram injury is short term, so that would be another reason to want Lyon. Okay, next injury, some tough news out of Pittsburgh. Jake Gonetzel is out 3 to 4 weeks. He got hurt in this last game that Pittsburgh played yesterday. Obviously, rough news for his fantasy managers, especially if you're in one of those leagues, a couple of my dynasties that are just about to go into their fantasy playoffs because of 2-week playoff matchups. That would really hurt for the cupful. Playoffs still are a month away, so maybe you'll get Gonetzel back just in time. Could be the kind of thing where if you're fighting to make the playoffs, and you have Gonetzel, maybe you trade him to a playoff contender. Maybe there could be a win-win there where it's some help now versus some help later. In the meantime, I'll be curious to see how this affects the Penguins' power plays specifically because they've been rolling those weird ones. Crosby and Malkin split on different units. So maybe now with Gonetzel out, they'll just they won't feel like they have the depth to do that, and they'll go back to just putting all their best guys left on the same unit. So that'll be something to watch, and we'll have to see the lines. So definitely just keep your eyes on GameDayTweets.com to see the Penguins lines. They're a good team. Their beat writers are always there with us with both the even strength and power play lines. But yeah, tough break for Gonetzel. He's having a really good season, right? Overall, we're looking at 52 points in 50 games. It's a big loss in fantasy and for the team, I'm sure, which really the Penguins don't need this right now.
Yeah, we don't know as recording time what the lines are going to shake out as, but when the Penguins game starts at 8:30 or maybe shortly before in warm-ups, we might have some indication, at least for even strength, and then power play later in the game maybe.
Right, true. Maybe we can give an update when we're done recording, depending on how long we go here. I know people like to make fun of me that sometimes when I come on short shifts, it ends up being a little bit longer. This isn't too actionable, but Frederick Anderson back at practice for the Carolina Hurricanes. So, who knows? It says the netminder is from Walt Ruff. The netminder is working with the full group for the first time since being diagnosed with a blood clotting issue in early November. So we haven't gotten an update on when he'll be back. Obviously, a Kochetkov sticks as being your sure thing full-time starter for the time being. Maybe if you're looking like super long-term, it is possible Anderson comes back. Who knows how good he'll be? But yeah, nice to see anyways that he's back on the ice because it was a scary-looking issue back when the announcement first came out.
Yeah, and tough to manage, except maybe, don't go buy high on a Kochetkov right now with Ranta injured, thinking, you've got him for the rest of the season. It's possible that Anderson does come back and start splitting workload or taking a majority of the workload. The whole goalie situation in Carolina has been really fluid all year, so this is more of the same in that respect.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe Kochetkov, good for now. A lot of people, I got him out of free agency actually in the Cupful just a week or so ago, which has worked out okay. So I'm just happy to enjoy him now, and then we'll see what happens. And also, yeah, like we were saying, like Anderson, who even knows how, he hasn't played for a long time. He's going to need a while to get back into game shape, I'm sure, before they'll put him in. I think that covers it for our injuries and outjuries. So maybe one more little piece of news before we get to hot and cold streaks and stuff. How about Kekalainen fired by the Blue Jackets? I'm not sure really, if there's much fantasy impact here. Maybe long term. Maybe it could be better for their prospects. Maybe worse. I don't know. I'm not one of those people that has a really great insight into like how GM changes affect players. But what do you think about Kekalainen? He'd been there for a long time.
Yeah, I think, the reports out of Columbus have been really negative from the player perspective this year, starting with the Babcock hire, but I think continuing after that as well. Maybe everyone's been so down on the team and management, and the GM change will signal, the organization is responding to the players' perspective on that, and maybe moving towards better things in the future. So if anything, maybe there's a bump. It'd be hard, I think, for Columbus and its players to be doing worse, I think, than they have been.
Yeah, I wonder if in hindsight, maybe he would want to redo on like the Severson contract, maybe the Provorov trade, really plug them up for their cap for these defensemen. I don't know how big of an impact they're making, but yeah, I guess we'll see if maybe this is a good news for their prospects if they weren't a fan of like the culture there in Columbus, and maybe things could turn around at some point. All right, so let's take our break now, and when we come back, we got a whole bunch of like line changes and hot and cold streaks. It's gonna be fun. We'll be back in a sec. Welcome back to Short Shifts with Elan Dubrovsky and Derrick Dodgson here, breaking down all your latest news and notes from the past couple of days. And we got a lot, okay? So we covered some injuries and outjuries. I actually didn't mention one potential outjury that's going to be coming soon. Shea Theodore is practicing. So that's going to be exciting. Hopefully he'll be able to come back and help his fantasy managers. It's whatever. I don't think that Pietrangelo is going to get hit that much. It's not as if he's been that amazing anyway. So not too much of impact there, except for if you have Theodore, in which case, like, 2 thumbs up. Obviously, you're excited. Let's go to our first hot streak, which is kind of related to an injury. Nico Daws has been playing the last 3 games for New Jersey. Vanacek was ill and had an injury, and now apparently Vanacek is like not ill anymore, but is still affected by his, I think, lower body injury. And the word is that he's going to be out, at least till next week. So Nico Daws played both the Monday and Tuesday, which is like the Devils called up Schmid, who started the season. He beat Daws out for the backup role, but then even with Schmid available, Daws had that great game against Seattle on Monday, letting in only 1 goal and 28 shots for the win, and then the Devils got the win against Nashville on Tuesday, and Daws only led in 2 goals. There was that quote after the Monday game from Jack Hughes saying, like, it's easier to win when your goalie stops the puck, which a lot of people thought was maybe a shot at Vanacek, and like, why not? So who knows, maybe, like, obviously, like, Vanacek won't be injured that long from what we've heard, but also, like, if Daws is playing well, maybe this is like a Joey Decord kind of situation, Alex Lyon versus Husso, like maybe like even though it's been only a couple games, maybe at this point the Devils are just like, hey, Jack Hughes is happy. Let's just keep playing Daws until he blows it. We'll see how it goes today against the Kings. So far, I don't know, 0-0, 13 saves so far for Dawes. So far starting well. I don't want to jinx him. Derek, let's say you had Dawes available as well as Vejmelka. Who would be the one you're jumping at? Both of them with their alternate goalie being injured for a little bit.
Definitely Dawes for me. In the short term, I think, their workload should be similar, but I just have a lot more faith in New Jersey as a team. I know they haven't, been great this year, but I think that a lot, to a large extent, had to do with injuries they suffered early in the year. And I think they're the ones who would have maybe a more realistic chance of making a late season playoff push and getting at the very least the wins. It's hard to know for sure of the rest of the stats who's going to be better, but I would feel more confident on Dawes and New Jersey for the wins.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. I would definitely hang on to Dawes for now. Also, just the competition, like I said, like when Vanacek and Ingram come back, I think Ingram is a lot more of a threat potentially to Vejmelka than Vanacek is to Dawes. Like Devils are doing what they can to try to trade for a goalie. There were those rumors last week that they almost traded for Markstrom. So, and which would be kind of interesting because if they were to trade for a goalie, let's say they trade for like an Elvis Merzlikins or a Markstrom, I'd imagine Dawes gets sent down to the minors because he could go without having to clear waivers. Obviously, well, I mean, I keep saying obviously, but like I would assume they wouldn't waive Vejmelka, but maybe they would because who would claim him with how he's been playing? So that'll be interesting. But for now, maybe they don't need to trade for a goalie if Nico Dawes can continue doing so well. So yesterday, the San Jose Sharks got in their first game for a while, and they played against the Winnipeg Jets, and it was a very low-scoring affair. The Jets ended up winning 1-0. Mark Scheifele got the assist, not in terms of a point, but in terms of like helping with the shutout. There was like a replay where Scheifele like stopped a goal from almost going in. There were some changes in that game, though. I guess Rick Bowness wasn't happy with the top line. I was kind of excited as someone with Nick Ehlers on my Cupful team. They were rolling with Scheifele and Connor and Ehlers for a couple games, but midway through the game, Ehlers was moved to the fourth line, swapped with Iafallo. So that's definitely going to be something to watch moving forward if what the Jets do with their lines. Ehlers now only 1 point in his last 6 games. And he's not the only Jet that's cold right now, right? There's Josh Morrissey, who's coming off this great season last year, this huge breakout. And he started this year, was looking like he was like just as good as ever, hadn't lost a step. Now, all of a sudden, we're looking at 3 assists in his last 11 games and no goals. And then to make matters worse, I'll throw another big name at you, an even bigger name. Kyle Connor is pretty cold. Only 1 point in his last 8 games. He has not been the same since coming back from his injury. What are your thoughts on these 3 guys? And I guess, with Connor and Morrissey, I'd imagine he's not a drop. They're not drops, but like Ehlers could be approaching like drop territory. I'd be curious to know what you think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd be very hesitant to drop Ehlers given how valuable he was a month or 2 ago, and definitely wouldn't be dropping Connor or Morrissey. There's an interesting stat that Brian Johnson tweeted earlier today. In 166 minutes at 5-on-5, the Ehlers-Scheifele-Velarde line scored 15 goals. The Jets as a team have scored 15 goals in 640 minutes since breaking them up, i.e. that line combo is 4 times as efficient at scoring goals as the entire team has been since Connor returned, basically. So obviously this has been a bad skid for them as a team. It'll be interesting to see if they shake things up, maybe go back to what was working back while Connor was out.
Okay, yeah, that'll be interesting to follow for sure. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. I saw some breaking news here. Blake Wheeler has a bad injury. I'm seeing like he's done for the season. One tweet I'm seeing is saying I got exactly the same injury as Sergachev. So that's too bad. I guess not a guy who's been on a lot of people's fantasy teams, so he was starting to pick it up a little bit, like 5 shots in the last game. So sucks for Blake Wheeler, who's trying to get his career back on track after getting waived. Hopefully he can come back at some point. And yeah, with the Jets, I think these guys are all too high end to drop completely. But I guess if it's a shallow enough league, at least Ehlers, probably if you dropped, he wouldn't be added right away just because he was also cold at the start of the year. But like you said, there was that beautiful run in the middle. Come back. Okay, let's go to some happy news here for a little bit. Brian and I have been watching carefully and discussing Arturi Lehkonen over on the Avalanche and how he was eased back into the lineup, started like in a low spot in the lineup there on the 3rd line, 4th line, wasn't getting too much ice time, wasn't doing too much. We were wondering when it's time to just give up on the guy. Well, people who held on definitely are happy that they did because he had a huge 2-goal, 2-assist game versus Washington. on Tuesday, 5 shots in that game. Right now, Colorado's playing Tampa, so we'll see how things shake out there. But clearly, Lehkonen has a little bit of game left in him. I'm seeing today he's playing with Ross Colton and Miles Wood, which isn't the most ideal, but he had bumped Ross Colton from the top power play, so that's a really good spot for Lehkonen. So I think if he had been dropped, probably that game is a good signal that it's time to jump back on.
Yeah, I have him in one league and was thinking about dropping him actually after the sort of disappointing first 6 games back. But yeah, 4 points and only one of them on the power play actually. So despite what might seem like an underwhelming line combo at 5-on-5, he managed to pick up 3 points there a couple nights ago.
Yeah, and I do wonder if those even strength lines, though, might change at some point. Jonathan Drouin, who's got that amazing spot, both on the top line and top power play, and on at even strength playing with McKinnon and Rantanen, pointless in 4 now, only 2 shots in his last 4 games. I think for me it would be pretty easy to swap Drouin for Lehkonen, but even if like Lehkonen's not available, like how close would you be to just considering Drouin as a snoozer at this point? You know, he had a really good run, but right now he's super cold, like even with the good deployment, which on one hand is like, well, if he's got the good deployment, maybe you hold. But on the other hand, it's like, how long will it last if he's not able to produce there?
Yeah, it probably depends on how deep your league is, but I haven't actually paid a ton of attention to him myself. I haven't had him in any of my leagues recently. He's still breaking 20 minutes of ice time. You know, as long as he's on that line and playing that much, yeah, that's tough. That's a tough question. You know, there's a cardio session back on February 8th. Yeah, you know, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to drop him before he gets bumped off that top line, or he's going to get bumped off that top line, and then you'll know to drop him.
Right. Okay. So definitely, if you want to hold a little longer, just keep a closer eye on him. If maybe you were thinking he was like a sure thing, it's starting to look a little less so. Looking at the Avs today against Tampa, it was like 1-0. Then I blinked, and now it's 2-1 for Tampa. Justice Annunen is in net. This guy is not having a great first few kicks at the can here in the NHL. I think the Avalanche are probably going to need... There were some rumors also just today that the Avalanche were going to trade for Jake Allen. It was like the rumor came up. It was like all over Twitter, and like 10 minutes later, it was like, it's not happening. So I don't know like how these things happen, but I think if the Avs want a... it's probably useful to have a backup goalie that you can play once in a while, and it doesn't seem like Annunen. It's only after one period. Who knows? Maybe he shuts down the Lightning for the rest of the game. We'll see. Obviously, goals from Point and Kucherov, the two players who are a bit tough to defend against. Actually, we were going to bring up Braden Point. He's cold, pointless in 4, cold no longer. Scored a goal. All he needed was to play against Justice Annunen. Were you going to... suggest any alarm to be raised for Point, or did you just mention to me to bring up just so we can say don't worry about it?
Yeah, that's an easy one, I think, to say don't worry about it, especially with how hot Kucherov has been. And, one would expect that they are going to keep pushing him to get points and have a, Hart caliber season. And if not Hart, probably an Art Ross. It's I think a short-term slide for Point, but it's already broken it. So time to move on.
Yeah. Okay. So how about another guy like Lehkonen, who was super cold after coming back from his injury in Boone Jenner, and just like Lehkonen, he came out with a couple big games to make us all be like, all right, well, I guess no more reason to be concerned about him. Jenner had 2 goals against Tampa, and then on Tuesday he scored a goal against Ottawa. But the stat line continues: 9 shots, 5 hits. Like he was helping you across the board there. 17 face-off wins if you're in a league that counts face-offs. In my Dynasty League, by the way, I will just say I have Boone Jenner, and it counts all those things, and it was a very fun night. Too bad my playoffs start next week. This would have been a helpful game to have gotten when it matters. But yeah, so if Boone Jenner had been dropped, he had been dropped actually, Derek, in my couple division. I did not grab him, sadly. Some more enterprising manager did. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear that Jenner, also I should mention, he's getting the great deployment over in Columbus. He's been playing with Johnny Gaudreau on the top line. He's back on the top power play. It wasn't the case when he first came back. But yeah, all signs are pointing to you want Jenner on your team ASAP if he's out there.
Well, I'll say definitely all signs from the last 2 games. And all signs from the 6 games before that was you don't want him on your team. So,
But I'm gonna write that off to like he was recovering. He was getting back up to speed from his injury. Mm-hmm. But
yeah. It's definitely possible. I think the what he's shown in the last couple of games is worth an ad and worth keeping an eye on him to see if he earns a hole basically. But yeah, 9 shots, 5 hits, all the things you mentioned, they're great.
All right, let's end with a few interesting line combinations I've seen recently. Again, when you're talking about line combos, this could change in a second. So this is very short-term observations, but you never know what can hold. Over in Nashville, for a long time, Gustav Nyquist has been a fixture on the top power play. But it looks like things are changing, at least for now. In the practice lines from today, we saw that they were rolling with Cody Glass, I guess, taking his spot, and then 2 defensemen, Josi and Barry, along with Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly, and then Gustav Nyquist bumped to the second power play, so that might be a reason to, first of all, I guess you can get interested in a Cody Glass if you're in a super deep league. Gustav Nyquist still on the top line, but if he loses the power play, that's obviously a significant place where you can produce. Pointless in his last game against New Jersey. Before that, he had 3 points in 2 games. So something to watch. I don't know if I'd be dropping him just yet. I'd wait to see if this lasts for a couple of games, but kind of a bummer if you've been enjoying him as an early season free agent ad that was going really well. And I guess also I should mention Tyson Barrie, who was scratched for a whole bunch of games. But like I said, now he's on the top power play. Even being in the lineup is pretty nice. I also see that he was playing on the top pairing with Roman Josi. Hasn't helped too much. He has an assist though in his last 3 games and some decent shots, 6, 2, and 3 shots in each of Tyson Barrie's last 3 games. So maybe if you need defense, you could do worse, but also he could easily just get scratched any game now. Speaking of the top power play over in Tampa Bay, they bumped Nick Paul. He'd been there for a lot of the season, and we've gotten on and off of being excited about him. He's been talked about a lot on short shifts. At least for today, we've got Anthony Cirelli there on the top power play. Are you interested at all in an Anthony Cirelli as long as he's there? At even strength, Cirelli's playing with Paul and Brandon Hagel, a second line. But yeah, PP1 is Stamkos, Kucherov, Points, Cirelli, and Hedman. So that's a nice group for Cirelli to be surrounding himself with for as long as he's there. We've seen Nick Paul have some big games from there. Also a lot of quiet games.
Yeah, Cirelli's certainly been, putting up a lot of assists, especially recently. While he's on power play 1, I'd say interested. But the second, if it changes back, I would probably not. He really doesn't rack up the shots, goals, or other peripherals the way some other people might. Near the bottom end of your roster. It's definitely his fate is tied to power play 1. I would say from my perspective.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Yeah, fringe guy for sure. Sometimes good for a stream. And hey, if you see him jump on the top power play, you feel extra smart about having him, maybe hold him for an extra couple games. Really nice hot streak over in Ottawa. Shane Pinto making up for missing all that time. He didn't need a huge amount of time to get up to game speed. He had points in his first couple games, and now he's got 6 points in his last 3 games going into today's game against Anaheim, which has started. The power plays in Ottawa are pretty evenly split. So you can't exactly say he's on PP1 or PP2, though I do like his unit, with Norris, Kachuk, and Giroux. That's pretty sweet. And it looks like Chikrin, and then it's been Tarasenko, Batherson, Kubalik, Stützle, and Shabbat. So, or maybe Shabbat and Chikrin might be flipped out. The minutes are a bit weird there. It's looking at those units, actually, it kind of looks like Stützle is on power play too. Just looking at the names. But I guess it all comes down to the ice time. But who knows what Ottawa will do and what Jacques Martin, how long he'll stick with these lines. But anyways, if Pinto's out there in free agency, I think we're getting to a point soon where you'll regret not having added him if you don't add him soon. He's really going off. And I should mention also at even strength, by the way, Pinto playing with Tarasenko and Ridley Gregg, which is a fun middle 6 line. I wouldn't even necessarily call it the third line. It's maybe they're just rolling a top line of Kachuk, Batherson, Norris, and then maybe 2 second lines.
Yeah, Ottawa's really leaning into a top 9, and looking at Pinto's recent run of success, I guess it adds up to 6 points in 3 games. All of them or I can't say for sure at 5-on-5. I think it's at 5-on-5. None on the power play, none on the penalty kill. So yeah, it's Grieg and Tarasenko that he's been working really well with. Grieg gets a little bit of a emotional boost after being the focal point of a win the other night and the Maple Leafs frustration thereafter. So maybe that's a good springboard for them to have a good run the rest of the season. In many ways, Pinto's taking over. If he's nominally the third line, he's doing better than Josh Norris, who's classically the second line center. So maybe Pinto usurps that role, and at some point they start writing the line combos the other way.
Yeah, I guess Ottawa might change things around a little bit, but I would definitely rather just have Pinto on my roster to wait and see versus not while he's hot like this. Let's end in Buffalo. There was a bit of a mistake in the last episode. Right off the top, Lewis was talking about how the Sabres were having a big game, and then he mentioned that people were disappointed about having Alex Tuch as a late first-round pick. We found out afterwards he meant Tage Thompson. Like Tage, Tuch, pretty similar. But man, how the heck did Tage Thompson, in a game where Buffalo won 7-0 against LA, how did Tage have no points and only one shot? Like that really just put the stamp on like this pick was a bust. I don't know. But what are you going to do about Tage Thompson? Let's end on a happy note, okay? Let's talk about Jordan Greenway, who you mentioned is on a bit of a run. He had 2 goals and 1 assist in that game against LA. And he had some games, not that much of a run, but he has had a couple other goals over the past few weeks. So Jordan Greenway, is he someone that you have any interest in adding? I see he's playing with Alex Tuch and Casey Middlestat. Not a bad spot to be in. There were short stretches when he was on Minnesota. Remember, we brought him up on the podcast as someone to be interested in. But I'm curious to hear your argument for Jordan Greenway.
Yeah, that's another third line nominally that kind of sounds like a second line when you read the names off. It seems to be working. So many of these teams we've been talking about have had, real struggles from their expectations. Buffalo is, perhaps near the top of that list. I don't know what to say except maybe, when the schedule works, go for it. I think he's worth it.
Some hesitation there, but maybe he's a name to know as a potential streamer.
He's doing well, but I don't know if I would be dropping, maybe more established players for him at this point in the season, starting to think about fantasy playoffs. I want to make sure my lineup is in, its best possible, or my roster's in its best possible shape a few weeks from now when playoffs start. And while he's good right now, is he going to be the best? Is he going to be in my lineup 4 weeks from now? I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, well, hey, we got to get some content for the people in your super deep leagues, your 20-person leagues. Maybe then Greenway becomes a little bit of a more appealing free agent. I'll mention really quickly also in Toronto, Timothy Liljegren has been quarterbacking the top power play today. On the last episode with Shams and Lewis, they were talking about Jake McCabe. He got a shot QBing the top power play, but today it's Liljegren. So we'll see how that goes. And, so go back to what Brian and I said on the Mega Show, which was, yeah, maybe he's interesting. But also, as we've seen, things could change very quickly. And let's see him produce first. He's pointless in 12 games. Okay, thanks everyone for listening to this episode of Short Shifts. Derek, this has been a blast. The time just flew by. Before I let you go, Derek, give us the update. How are you doing in your cupful season so far?
Doing all right. I'm currently, I think, 4th in the standings in my Tier 4 division. Right up near the top in terms of total points for. It's actually pretty close between a group of us. Shout out to Tier 4 Small End. It's going to be an interesting race down to the wire. My last few matchups are all against playoff teams, I think, as well. So it's going to be a fight down to the end to get in, and then we'll see what happens after if I do.
Well, it sounds like your fate is in your hands if you're going to be playing against the teams that are right with you in the standings. Though I guess you say the fate is in your hands, but it's also in the hands of all these NHLers like Tage Thompson, who hopefully you don't have him, because then you probably wouldn't be in a playoff spot.
Not in the cupful, but I did keep him in another league that's a pretty shallow keeper league, and that pick is hurting a little bit, but what are you going to do?
Might not make the cut next year. All right, Derek, this was great. Thanks again for coming on. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I guess we can roll the outro music, let people know that we'll be back with the Matchup Maximizer this weekend, and then Brian and I will have the Mega Show on Sunday. Check out Game Day Tweets for all your latest news and notes. And until we talk to you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.